Hey there, everybody. I'm Jeff, your tabletop technician here on the Dice Tower, back here in the Shenandoah Valley at the Torty Cabin, and continuing the next 10 of my top 100 list here on Jeff Week on the Dice Tower channel. Let's go ahead and get to the list. Starting off my number 70 with a big, lavish game. This is Tidal Blades, Heroes of the Reef. This was a Kickstarter project from a number of years ago, and this game has always been well received for its just phenomenal table presence. It is a huge game, lots of little boards that come out into play, big miniatures, very colorful pieces, and it's sort of set in this tropical paradise universe, if you will. And the idea is that players represent these sort of heroes from various, sort of anthropomorphized animals, and they're trying to compete but also deal with these invading monsters from the fold. And you're using these battle dice, trying to roll various attributes to then meet the challenges necessary to take out these monsters. One of my favorite stories of Tidal Blades was that I was at the 2021 Dice Tower retreat. Someone sat down with this box to try and learn it, and I volunteered to help them and teach them how to play, even though I hadn't played in a while, but it was still fairly easy to remember how to play it. We had a couple extra people join us, played the game. That gentleman was a little trepidatious. He was almost like, yeah, maybe I just want to learn the rules on my own. I don't know. Well, okay, sure, let's try it. And then ended up just cleaning the table with us. And it was kind of neat for me because I've always enjoyed the game, but I've never done very well with it. And seeing how well he played made me realize that there's probably a lot more to it than even I've been able to discover. Just a neat game, a neat challenge. I like the dice rolling because of the fact that there's a lot of mitigation options. That's a big must for me when it comes to dice chucking games. I want to make sure that I can set myself up in a way that I can't fail, or at least can't fail completely. And that's definitely an option to you in my number 70, Tidal Blades, Heroes of the Reef. Number 69 is another big, heavy, complicated game from Capstone. This is Coffee Traders. This game has all of the underpinnings of a Kickstarter, a lavish production, a beautiful table presence, and yet just a retail game that you can go and purchase. At least you could. I do believe it is now out of print and fairly hard to come by. I've only played this a number of times, also first playing this at the 2021 Dice Tower Retreat. The rulebook on this is a little difficult to get through, and the game itself is not obvious. It's not punishingly difficult, but it is very, very thinky. You are trying to sort of build up a series of coffee farming plantations. You're trying to put out better plantations to produce more coffee. You're also putting out various upgrade buildings to improve your ability to get your hands on some of this coffee. And then you're using the coffee that you accumulate through sort of this kind of interesting bidding system across all these different regions to collect coffees to fulfill contracts and all that kind of stuff. A lot of unique intricacies in how this works, a lot of sort of difficult challenges that you have to overcome to try and get all this thing done. I have seen someone play a near perfect game that got just about everything built, every contract fulfilled, and housed us on points. It has never ever come to me that easily, but I have certainly always enjoyed Coffee Traders, my number 69. Number 68 is another sort of deck building game, and another game that I think might be a little polarizing for some folks. This is Dead Reckoning by John DeClaire and AEG. This is, as I mentioned, kind of a deck builder because you will always have the same hand of, I believe it's 12 or maybe 16 cards. I don't quite remember. But instead of adding new cards to your hand or your deck, you're upgrading these cards. So as you're sailing around this large sort of archipelago area, you're accumulating these clear plastic cards that provide various symbols. You're sliding them into various crew member cards and upgrading their abilities. But there's also a standard card in each of these sleeves that you can rotate, flip over, and then rotate again to upgrade each of these crew members' base attributes across 3 additional levels. The first couple of times I played this, it was interesting, but it there were just a couple things I didn't really like about it. The more recent time I played it's actually on this very table with my brother. We did a 2-player game of this, and I really kind of tried to push some of the systems that I hadn't really messed with before, and ended up having a really, really good game, ended up having a really fun experience with it. And it made me realize, as some of these other games I've been mentioning, there's probably more here to this than I've really gotten to delve into. There is also a couple of story sort of campaign games that I haven't gotten to delve into, and I'd love to check those out. So yeah, this game has just slightly climbed up this list a bit for me based on some recent playthroughs, and I'm really hoping I can get to check this out a bit more. Dead Reckoning, my number 68. Number 67 is a rising star from Days of Wonder, a game that has certainly piqued the hotness across the hobby for the past year or so. This is Heat, Pedal to the Metal. This is the 4th racing game on this list, and I think the Heat is a decent card-playing game in general. You have a hand of cards you start off with, and then you have a couple of Heat cards that you can, and sometimes must, add into your deck to be able to navigate tighter corners or simply push your car a little faster down the track. Of course, you end up with too much heat in your hand and you won't be able to do anything in that particular turn. And of course, if you ever need to add heat and you can't, then you'll take on stress cards, which just make the game a bit harder for you through the rest of the race. I don't think that Heat is the best racing game necessarily. It doesn't really apply a lot of racing theory. You're trying to take corners at certain speeds, but there's no real concepts of racing line, of trying to attack corners or trying to pass other players tactically. You're just, you just kind of go through other cars and you're always on the inside edge of the track unless there's already someone there, and then you just park next to them. So definitely not the best racing game, but a decent card-playing game, something that certainly makes you sort of plan yourself carefully through the next turn or two. Heat, Pedal to the Metal, my number 67. Number 66 is a fairly newer game. This is Ancient Knowledge by Yellow. This is it's a fairly abstract engine building game with a unique time element to it. So you have these wonder cards that you're placing at the top of your sort of player board, and they're numbered, I believe, 1 to 6. And then at the end of each one of your turns, these cards slide to the left until they eventually fall off the timeline and they become part of your history. However, you're putting these little knowledge tokens on each of these cards, and if the knowledge tokens are still on that card when they slide off, that means you have not learned from that wonder, and those tokens become broken knowledge, which are negative points at the end of the game. What's interesting is that these cards do a lot of different things, sometimes while they're in play, sometimes when you play them, sometimes when they fall off the end of the track. And so there really does become a lot that you're trying to manage and keep track of. There are also these knowledge cards that you can sort of play that may give you some immediate bonuses or some endgame scoring. There's just a lot happening in this, and sometimes it can get a bit chaotic, and sometimes it can certainly just go poorly for you based on the luck of the draw. But in general, it is a really unique challenge, and I did end up picking up a copy of this mainly because there is an expansion coming out, I hope this year, which is supposed to introduce solo play. And I think this game would be a lot of fun to play solo because I would like to understand a little better how it works, understand the combos of the cards a little better, and try and understand better ways to get through it, as opposed to struggling through my turn in a multiplayer game. But certainly something that I have enjoyed the puzzle of. Ancient Knowledge, my number 66. My number 65 is a game that I have not played in a while, nor have I played it very often. This is Hellenica, Story of Greece by Mr. B Games. However, I really, really have enjoyed the times that I have played it. This is sort of a kitchen sink type game, right? You've got some worker placement, you've got bidding, you've got area control, you have hidden objectives, you have asymmetrical abilities, you have public objectives. There's so much going on in this, but what I really liked about it was that you're basically racing to accomplish these various objectives, some of which you have privately, some of which are public. Everyone is working towards those. And the moment that you've reached, I believe, 3 of those objectives, you simply win the game. But there is so much going on. There are various monsters that can come out, and you can try and bid, spending your favor with the various Greek pantheon of gods to send them against your opponents to try and slow them down, of course, as you're all working towards these achievements. And so it's a game that, while I could not sit down and just immediately play this. I'd have to refresh myself quite a bit on how it plays. It has a really nice production, and it was a really, really neat puzzle. I liked I liked working on my own thing, but also still trying to kind of just keep my opponents in check, and that made it a lot of fun. I need to get this played again, definitely. Hellenica, Story of Greece, my number 65. Number 64, I have played a bit, and in fact, it's funny because this is very new to this list. It is not a new game. In fact, it came out in 2018, but this is Neom. Build the City of Tomorrow, I believe, is the tagline on the box. And I was introduced to this game right here at this table just a few months ago with some good friends of mine and friends of the Dice Tower, Katie and Greg Bowerly of the Meeple Society. They came down to visit me for a week here at the cabin. We played a ton of games, and this was one that they introduced me to, and I believe I purchased it before we were even done playing. This is a tile-based city building game. You have a board in front of you with a 5x5 grid, and you're drafting these tiles to play out various buildings. You're generating resources. You have one resource you can build at the beginning of the game, and you can add more production tiles to build more resources, generate more resources. But then you can buy resources from your opponents, and of course they can buy resources from you, which you get paid for. And so there's this neat kind of element in that. Well, I really need brick. You're making brick, so I'll pay you $2 and I can get this tile placed. And of course, like games like Suburbia, these tiles may feed off of each other. You've got a number of goals you're trying to reach, sort of default in the game, but then also various tiles that you draft at the very beginning of the game, which add additional end game scoring criteria to your city. So it mixes some systems of some games that I've really enjoyed. Anno 1800 being one, with this ability to produce and then sort of share resources, and Suburbia for this idea of, various tile adjacencies or things feeding off of each other, kind of combos or almost engine building elements to a city building game. This reminded me a lot of the original SimCity game, which I had a lot of fun with way back in the 90s, but a game that I just have enjoyed playing quite a bit. Like I said, I picked up a copy of this. I've played it a number of times, introduced it to my family, my sister, and everyone has really had a lot of fun with this. A really neat game, Neom. Number 63 on this list should get me a good smile from Mr. Mike Delisio, because this is Smartphone Inc. Smartphone Inc. is just a straightforward game, economy, industry, business management game about trying to sell cell phones across the globe. And it is one that I think at first blush, most folks are going to say, well, who would possibly be interested in this? But as a game, it feels so polished. You have these 2 boards that you're rearranging in front of you to generate the actions that you'll be able to take throughout that round. And then the round has a very clear structure in that first you are trying to do some research. You're trying to, add new tech to your phones. You're trying to expand your business across the globe. You're producing phones, adjusting the prices of your phones, and then trying to sell them across the various markets. Of course, competing with other players, with tiebreakers for that competition being based upon the cheapest phone price. And that's it. And you do that for something like 5 rounds, and you kind of start off at the very beginning going, well, I don't know, I guess I'll do this. I'll do these 5 things. And then later on, you're going, oh my gosh, I need to do so much of this stuff. There's so many things I need to get going. I need to beat that person on that market. Oh, I need to set my prices here, but I need to make a lot more phones than I made last time. And if I don't get that 5G tech, I'm in big trouble. And it becomes incredibly immersive because you are fully cognizant of the challenges of running such a business. It feels so real in what you're trying to do that it just completely pulls you into its theme, despite having this very basic, mostly white board in front of all the players, a couple of simple tokens and components, but a very, very tactical, thinky, strategic, challenging game. Smartphone Inc., my number 63. Number 62 is another somewhat recent addition to this list. I played this just earlier this year at a local convention here in Richmond called RiverCon. This is Autobahn by Alley Cat Games. This one, this was a Kickstarter. I got a copy of it and then started hearing some, negative opinions on it, and it just kind of sat on my shelf collecting dust. Well, a friend of mine brought it to RiverCon. It was a difficult teach. There is a lot happening in this game. It is a combination of pick up and deliver, tons of engine building, tons of sort of city building, almost semi-cooperative. You're trying to add to the various interstates of the German Autobahn, opening up new markets, opening up connections to new cities, and then trying to, deliver goods to those various cities. And all of this then works upon getting these workers and putting workers into the various agencies that run these different divisions of the highway. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but each of these roads are organized by different color patterns. And so you're placing workers into offices relating to those different color patterns and eventually promoting them to various points in the Autobahn in general. Again, some master agency, I don't really know. But when they get to that point, they then open up end game scoring opportunities. So basically, you're playing this game for a long time with a score of 0 until you finally get someone promoted up into a position that then starts giving you points based on what you've done. So maybe you've placed a whole bunch of service stations across these highways, and that does nothing for you at all until you suddenly get someone in that main office that scores you based on those service centers. Or maybe you've put a ton of roads. Maybe you've expanded the network of roads. But again, you have to get someone in the appropriate office to then score you points based on the number of roads that you've built. And so you've got so many different things that you're working towards, but you have no points unless you're also working on this worker placement and worker growth, promotion aspect of this game. And I was really, really surprised by how well this worked. I think this game deserves a lot more credit and something I need to certainly get played a bit more. Autobahn, my number 62. My number 61 is my 4th space game overall in this series. This is Planet Unknown by Adam's Apple Games. Now, I really think this game put Adam's Apple on the map. I had an older game of Adam's Apple, which was a sort of a beer industry game, and it was really, really bad. I'm also not a huge fan of polyomino games, but the first time I played this, I was just blown away at how streamlined and efficient it is. You've got this lazy Susan of tokens that you're drawing from, and players are doing that simultaneously, placing these tiles on their planet board and then moving up these various tracks. And each of these tracks kind of does different things for you. They may let you fill in little gaps and cracks between the tiles on your planet. They may let you move this rover around to collect asteroid debris or rescue life pods. But they also can help you on these engine building elements. They can help you in these various competitions between your neighbors. And all of this just comes together for a very, very tight experience. I played this game at 5 players and finished with like 3 points between first and last place. So it is a very, very tight game that requires some really efficient play. And I can certainly say that this one surprised me. I ended up picking up a retail copy of it, and now I'm waiting for my all-in pledge because I'm looking forward to checking out some of the broader variability of this. You've got planets with holes in them. You've got planets where you have to be able to slide the tiles in. You've got a black hole tile or a board that you're playing on where you're only playing to the corners. And so you can really, really get just different and crazy and chaotic playing this game, and something that, yeah, I've had a lot of fun with. My number 61, Planet Unknown. That is the last of this list. We're getting into the 50s, and then we'll be in the top half of the top 100. I'm looking forward to getting through that, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.
Hey folks, thanks for watching another one of our videos. If you like our videos, if you like our channel, you would love to game with us at one of our conventions. Check out Dice Tower Cruise, Dice Tower East, and Dice Tower West. Fantastic conventions where we play games with wonderful people, a humongous library, and lots of other events and stuff. Also, don't forget to check out our channel, like and subscribe. I'm Tom Bassel.